You came to Xylos, a dead world, just another rock on your survey route. Your job was simple: find valuable minerals for a dying homeworld. You were a glorified rockhound, just with a much more expensive hammer. The sky was a perpetual shade of rust. The ground was gray dust and shattered stone. Nothing had lived here for 1 billion years. Nothing was supposed to live here ever again. Your contract was for 3 rotations, 3 cycles of watching the dim sun crawl across a lifeless horizon. It was mind-numbing work. Scan, drill, analyze, repeat. Your only company was the hum of the land crawler and the quiet desperation of your people. You were looking for iridium, maybe some platinum, something to buy your species a little more time. You never expected to find salvation. You certainly did not expect to find them. The humans. It happened on your 52nd day. The deep-range scanner started to scream. It was not the familiar chirp of dense metals. This was a structured, complex signal. It was a song of pure mathematics buried deep, miles beneath the planet's crust. Your first thought was an error, a ghost in the machine. Your scanner had a better sense of humor than you did. But the signal was stable. It was deliberate and impossibly clear. It pulsed with a steady rhythm, a heartbeat in the stone. No natural formation could create such a pattern. This was a whisper of technology, advanced technology, far beyond anything your people could produce. A cold dread mixed with frantic excitement. Who could build something so deep? How long had it been waiting? You recalibrated the sensors. The signal remained. It was a challenge, a puzzle box buried for eons. You had your orders. Report anomalies and wait for instruction. But your people were fading. Waiting was a luxury you could not afford. You angled the crawler's drill. The drill whined for 7 days straight. It chewed through rock and ancient strata. The signal grew stronger with every foot you descended. You bypassed sleep cycles. You lived on nutrient paste and raw focus. The thought of discovery was a powerful stimulant. Finally, the drill hit something that would not break. The sensors showed a material of impossible density. It absorbed every scan you threw at it. You switched to excavation lasers. You carved a massive cavern around the object. The dust settled slowly, revealing what slept beneath the world. It was a monolith, a perfect, seamless slab of black material. It drank the light from your floods. It was impossibly smooth, utterly without feature except for one. In the center of the vast surface was a mark, an indentation, the shape of a 5-fingered hand. The proportions were strange. Long fingers, a surprisingly slender palm. It was an invitation. You felt a pull you could not explain. You moved your crawler closer. Your own 3-fingered hand felt clumsy, primitive. This was a relic from a forgotten age, a tombstone or a key. You were about to find out. Your people, the Cathar, were fading, not from war or plague, but from a slow, creeping sterility, a genetic unraveling. Your birth rates had plummeted for centuries. Every new generation was smaller than the last. Your brightest minds had found no solution. They predicted extinction within 5 more generations. 5. The word echoed in your mind. The 5-fingered hand on the monolith felt like a cruel joke. Every survey mission like yours was a desperate search, a quest for some resource, some miracle mineral to fund a new line of research, something to stave off the great silence. The monolith was an anomaly. It was outside every protocol you had ever known. Your duty was clear. You had to report it to the High Council. They would send a team of experts. They would study it for years, decades. They would form committees. subcommittees, and probably a steering group for the catering. And your people would continue to die. The handprint was a question, and you felt the answer in your bones. This artifact was not meant to be studied. It was meant to be used. Placing your hand against it was a violation of a dozen laws. It was a career-ending, possibly life-ending, decision. But your career meant nothing. Not when your entire civilization was on the brink. You looked at the handprint. Then you looked at the image of your fading homeworld on your screen. The choice was not a choice at all. You powered down the drill. You extinguished the floodlights. The only light came from your crawler's cabin. It cast a long, lonely shadow across the cavern. You took a deep breath. The air from the recycler tasted stale. False. You opened the cockpit and stepped out onto the unearthed platform. The air was thin and cold. It held the ancient dust of a dead world. You walked to the monolith's base. It loomed over you, a silent giant from a lost time. Its presence was overwhelming. You felt like a child before God. You reached your hand toward the indentation. Your 3 thick digits hovered over the elegant 5-fingered shape. It was a poor fit. A key made for a different lock. What if it rejected you? What if it triggered a weapon system? You almost laughed at the thought. Annihilation was just a faster version of what was already happening. With a final, silent prayer to ancestors you barely believed in, you pressed your palm against the cold, smooth surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a light traced the outline of your hand. A soft, warm, golden light. And the monolith sang. It was a single note. A tone so pure and resonant, it felt like the universe humming. It did not just enter your ears. It vibrated through your bones. Through the rock beneath your feet, the entire planet seemed to tremble with that one perfect sound. The song of creation. The note held for a full minute. Then it faded into a profound silence. You stood, hands still pressed to the monolith. You felt a deep, rhythmic pulse emanating from it. A slow, powerful heartbeat. Then, on the surface miles above you, the real change began. You watched it on your crawler's external cameras. A fine, shimmering mist erupted from the monolith's location. It spread across the planet's surface like a silver tide. These were not gas or vapor. They were nanites, a swarm of microscopic machines beyond comprehension. They moved with a clear and terrifying purpose. The gray dust that covered the world began to change. The nanites consumed the sterile dirt. They broke it down. They reformed it. Hues of rich brown and dark black spread from the epicenter. The gray landscape was being devoured, replaced by something new, something alive. Patches of green appeared, first as a faint tint, then as a vibrant carpet of primitive moss, then grasses. Small, tenacious shrubs followed. The process was impossibly fast. 1 billion years of evolution compressed into a single hour. You watched, breathless, as the sky began to shift. The rusty haze thinned. It was replaced by a brilliant, startling blue. Clouds of pure white water vapor formed. And then, it began to rain. The first rain this world had seen in geological ages. Each drop was a confirmation, a miracle made manifest. The monolith had not just woken up. It had given birth to a world. The news of Xylos, now called New Cathar, spread through the galactic networks. It moved faster than a light-speed message. It moved like a shock wave, a dead world brought to life in less than a day. Your species, the quiet, scholarly Cathar, were suddenly famous, or maybe infamous. The High Council was furious at your breach of protocol. They were also ecstatic beyond measure. They tried to reprimand you and give you a medal at the same time. It made for some very confusing conversations. Fleets from a dozen different star nations appeared in orbit. The warrior Vec, the crystalline silicates, the gaseous traders of the Nimbus Collective, they all came to stare, to scan, to ask questions you could not answer. Your people were no longer a footnote in galactic history. You were the keepers of a miracle, the species that had found the key to life itself. The pressure was immense. Every leader wanted to know how you did it. They wanted to know if you could do it again. The monolith itself went silent after its great work. It remained a smooth, black slab, its handprint now just a shape in the stone. Your scientists studied it. They marveled at it, but they could not replicate it. They called the technology a Genesis device. They attributed it to a mythical precursor race. They called them the Makers, the humans. Your life changed completely. You were no longer a simple mineral surveyor. You were promoted, then promoted again. You became the leader of the new Genesis Task Force. It was a much better title than Head Rock Finder. The pay was better too. Your sole purpose was to find more of these human artifacts. The entire galaxy was gripped by Genesis fever. Every scavenger, corporation, and government began scouring dead systems. They searched for the telltale energy signature of a Maker device. It was the greatest treasure hunt in history. And you were at its head. You had an entire fleet at your command. The best scientists. The most advanced deep-range sensors your people could build. The hopes of not just your species, but many others, rested on your shoulders. Some wanted the Genesis, devices to create new homeworlds. Others saw a tool to create paradise planets for the wealthy. And some, you knew, saw a weapon. The ability to create life also implied the ability to remake it, to tailor it. The search was grueling. For every promising signal, there were 1,000 false positives. Dead stars pulsing with odd radiation. Strange geological formations. You felt like you were chasing ghosts, but you had touched one of their artifacts. You had felt its power. You knew they were real, and you knew there had to be more. While you hunted among the stars, your scientists made a breakthrough. Back on New Cathar, they had been studying the monolith. They analyzed the single note it had sung, the pulse it had emitted. They thought it was simply the operational frequency of the nanites. They were wrong. It was far more complex. Buried deep within the resonant frequencies was a layered data packet, a message. It was heavily encrypted, locked behind layers of star science that made your head spin. It took them months to peel back the first layer. What they found was not a technical manual. It was not a star chart. It was a warning. A final, desperate message from the Makers themselves. The humans. The message was fragmented, corrupted by deep time. But parts of it were chillingly clear. They spoke of a great enemy, a shadow that consumes. They spoke of a war that was not fought over territory or resources, but a war against existence itself. The Genesis devices were not just tools of creation. They were part of a larger plan, a desperate contingency. The message was unfinished. It cut out abruptly, but it left you with a terrifying image. The image of humanity, not as gods, but as refugees, running from something that had frightened them into hiding. Your search led you to a violent, chaotic system. It was dominated by a massive gas giant named Cyclops. Its atmosphere was a swirling vortex of ammonia and superheated steam. Storms the size of planets raged across its surface. It was the last place anyone would look for a miracle. But your sensors screamed with a familiar song, a deep, resonant energy signature. It was a Genesis device. But it was not on a moon. It was not in orbit. It was deep inside the gas giant itself, suspended in the crushing pressures of its core. Getting to it was considered impossible. The Vec fleet that had been shadowing you sneered and turned back. They called it a fool's errand, a ghost signal in the storm. You pushed your fleet forward. You used modified gravity anchors to descend into the maelstrom. The pressure on your ship's hull was immense. The turbulence threatened to tear you apart. After weeks of careful descent, you found it. It was not a monolith. It was a vast, spherical machine, miles in diameter, covered in intricate patterns that pulsed with soft light. This was not a world seeder. Your scientists quickly realized its purpose. It was a sky forge, a device designed to build a breathable atmosphere, to tame a violent gas giant and turn its moons into habitable worlds. It was another piece of the human puzzle, another act of impossible creation. With the sky forge secured, your science team turned its full attention to the fragmented message. They used the energy signatures from the new device. They used it as a key to unlock deeper layers of the human code. More of the message became clear. The translation was still rough, but the story it told was staggering. The humans had not been alone in their ascension. They spoke of teachers, a species that had guided them, a civilization that had unlocked the secrets of the universe before them. They called this species the Elder Ones. There were no descriptions of their appearance, no mention of their home system, just a sense of deep reverence and respect. The humans were their students, their inheritors. The Genesis technology, the message implied, was not entirely a human invention. It was a legacy, a gift from these mysterious Elder Ones, a tool to spread life across the barren corners of the galaxy. This changed everything. You were not just dealing with the legacy of one lost civilization. You were dealing with the legacy of two. It added another layer of mystery to the hunt. Who were the Elder Ones? And where did they go? Did they fall to the same great enemy that humanity fled from? The questions piled up. The answers remained buried in the stars. Your success did not go unnoticed or unchallenged. The Vec, a proud, martial species, grew jealous of your discovery. Jealousy was practically their state religion. They saw the Genesis, devices not as a gift, but as the ultimate prize. They intensified their own search. They threw all of their considerable resources into the hunt, and they got lucky. In a forgotten nebula, they found a cache of their own. It was not a single device. It was a collection of smaller artifacts, seeds of life, stored in a shielded, automated vault. But the Vec had no interest in creating paradise worlds. They saw a different potential, a much darker one. Their scientists worked feverishly. They twisted the life-giving code. They warped its elegant purpose. They reprogrammed the nanites, not to build soil and grow plants, but to consume, to break down complex materials, to turn ships and stations into gray dust. They had turned a Genesis device into a weapon of horrifying power, a plague that could devour entire fleets. A tool of creation had been perverted into a tool of absolute destruction. They tested it on an asteroid field first. The rocks vanished in seconds. Their next target, they announced, would be your new homeworld. A demonstration of their newfound power. The Vec fleet arrived in orbit of New Cathar. Their flagship was a monstrosity of jagged metal and arrogance. They broadcast their demands across all channels. Surrender the Genesis technology. Acknowledge Vec supremacy. Or watch your world be unmade. Your own fleet was hopelessly outmatched. Your people were scientists and explorers, not warriors. Despair settled over your new home. It seemed your miracle was to be short-lived. The VEC commander gave the order. The weapon was fired. A stream of corrupted nanites shot from their ship. A gray cloud of death moving toward your beautiful, living world. But then, something happened. The nanite stream slowed. It stopped. It recoiled as if it had hit a wall. Back on the VEC flagship, alarms screamed. The corrupted Genesis device was refusing the command. It was fighting its own programming. The humans, it turned out, were not just brilliant. They were clever. They had anticipated this exact scenario. The perversion of their gift, buried deep in the core programming of every Genesis, device was a failsafe, a final, unbreakable protocol. The technology could not be used to intentionally destroy a world teeming with complex life. The nanites were designed to recognize the very life they created, and to protect it. The weapon turned on itself. The VEC ship that fired it was consumed in a silent, terrifying implosion. Their fleet, stunned and terrified, fled the system. Humanity had saved you. Again. The failsafe did more than just save your world. When the VEC weapon imploded, it sent out a massive energy pulse. This pulse acted like a key. It resonated with the monolith on your world, and with the Skyforge you held in your fleet. It unlocked the final, uncorrupted piece of the human message. The missing data flooded your computers, and the truth was more terrifying than you could have imagined. The great enemy was real. The message showed you images, fleets of ships that were not ships. They were vast, organic creatures of the void, beings of sharp angles and dark energy. They did not conquer worlds. They consumed them. They drained suns of their energy. They fed on the very fabric of space-time. The message called them the Shadow. The humans had fought them. For centuries, they had used weapons that could crack planets. But the Shadow was endless. For everyone they killed, 10 more would appear. Humanity did not die out in a glorious last stand. They ran. They scattered. They abandoned their empire to save their species. The Genesis devices were not monuments to their power. They were lifeboats, a way to seed the galaxy with new worlds, in the desperate hope that some of them would remain hidden, untouched by the shadow that was consuming everything. The message ended with a star chart and a single, chilling directive. Prepare. You stood on the green hills of New Cathar. The sky was a perfect blue. The air was sweet with the scent of alien blossoms. Your world was a testament to human genius, a paradise born from a dead rock. But now you saw it differently. This world was not just a home. It was a fortress, a supply depot. The Genesis devices were not just terraformers. They were forges. They could create soil, yes, but they could also create metals, alloys of impossible strength. They could build atmospheres, but they could also build energy shields. The Skyforge was not just for taming gas giants. It was for building fleets, in orbit, hidden from sight. You finally understood. Humanity had not left behind tombs. They had left behind an arsenal. They seeded the galaxy with the tools of their own survival. They had given you, and anyone else who found their gifts, the means to fight back. The hunt for Genesis devices was no longer a treasure hunt. It was a race, a desperate scramble to gather the pieces of humanity's legacy, to build, to arm, to prepare for the return of the Shadow. You looked up at the stars, no longer with wonder, but with resolve. Humanity was gone, but their war was coming, and you were now a soldier on the front lines.